All right, everybody. I think we are streaming live now, and it is great to be here with you. And it is great to say hello to everybody in the chat. So, as you join us, please, please, please be sure to say hello. Let us know that you are here. We have Carrie Mack, who's running the church Facebook account. She'll be happy to greet you in there. And we're going to be monitoring the chat just to sort of look out for questions and comments on the conversation that we have tonight. This is our fourth and final Advent study, and those of you who have read the whole book will realize that there is actually a fifth chapter as well. That's okay. We've run out of time in Advent. We're just going to go through chapter 4 tonight, and we're going to trust that you all are reading ahead into that last chapter and finishing the book as well. We are really, really happy to be joined by two of our leaders here tonight, two of our lay people from Memorial. We have Jeff Aldridge, who heads up our Christian Education Committee, and he is joining us from Indiana, right, tonight. And so he's up there. We're glad he's here. We also have Jessica Scott with us tonight, who is one of our district co-lay leaders and involved in the leadership of our conference as well. I always tease her a little bit and say that she's kind of a big deal. She'll say she's not, but she actually is. But we here are here tonight to have a conversation around chapter 4 of our book, which is "Come Thou Long Expected Jesus," and I hope that you've all been able to follow along with what's going on in there. I was saying to Rachel and to Jeff and to Jessica earlier that this chapter seemed to be, to me, like a bit of a greatest hits of like Christmas traditions and things that are meaningful in ways that we find God and the good news of God with us in all of those traditions. And so pretty excited to speak to those tonight and to listen to the responses of our panel with us tonight. And I suppose I just want to ask that straight off the bat. And Jessica, I'm going to come to you first. What are some of your most treasured traditions or events or habits in the Christmas season?
Yeah, so my mom is the youngest of two, and so her brother has two kids who are about 10 years older than I am. And when they were little, Santa used to stop by Aunt Anne's house first in Florida, and then she would, as soon as he left, she would call up to their house in South Georgia and say, "Oh, Santa just left and he's on his way." And don't you know that Santa probably gets bored going back and forth the same route all the time? So when I was little and my siblings, when we were little, don't you know, Santa, he changed that route up and he started heading south first. They're coming from the north to south. And so, believe it or not, Aunt Gail and Uncle Bob, they would call and Santa had just left their house. And it was always amazing to me that it worked out that it was after Christmas Eve service, after we had dinner, and after we watched Rudolph. It was just perfectly timed and never missed. So, and then the fun part of that for me is that when we started having nieces and nephews, my cousins and I, Santa changed that route up again, and I happened to be further south, and my other cousin happened to be further south, and our siblings were further north, and Santa changed that up. And don't you know, he's doing it now again, where he's coming from north to south again because I have little ones. And so,
I
yeah,
love it.
that is my favorite tradition in our
I
house.
love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Jeff, tell me about some of your like just favorite traditions or events that take place at Christmas time.
Yeah, what I remember the most is always Christmas at my grandparents' house on my dad's side. He had four sisters, I had a lot of cousins. It was a small house, but you felt the most love there. And everyone, even though they were different, were always loved equally. You know, we opened presents from the youngest to the oldest, and they made sure that each person had exactly the same value. And so, even as a young kid, I started to see the value of team and no one being more important than anyone else, regardless of whatever their attributes, and so I will always remember my grandparents' Christmas as the place that just seemed the most like Christmas, and that's what I think of.
Love it. Thanks, Jeff. Rachel, how about you?
I have one meaningful one and one silly one. The meaningful one is that when we were kids, my mom would wrap a different Advent or Christmas book every day up till Christmas, and then we would unwrap that book each day. So in the end, we had 25 books. We've been doing that with the kids as well. It's kind of flopped because Aiden decided he was just going to unwrap all of them this year. Um, So it doesn't necessarily work with little kids, but it is meaningful because it just all of the books have some kind of message that's related to building on the story. The other one is just being a pastor's kid. Being at church on Christmas Eve means that we do not do traditional Christmas Eve dinner at all in my family. So we usually eat McDonald's or some other kind of fast food. And so even as an adult, that has become like the thing until now working at a church myself, but it has always been like McDonald's Christmas dinner or whatever fast food is closest to us.
I mean, you came to work for a church that does like nibblers,
Yes.
chicken nibblers, fast food for
Eaglers.
snacks between
Yes.
services. So, I think that's just another sign that this was exactly the right move, Rachel, for you.
Amen.
For me, gosh, a couple of traditions. So when I was a kid, was being involved in like the Christmas carol service that our school would do each year, and singing in the choir, learning those bass parts to all those carols. And like I just did it so often that they're just driven in now, where I just don't even think about singing the parts. I don't need to read the music. I'm just able to do it. And it just transports me back to those great times every time I do it. And I think the other one for me is just lights, like Christmas lights. Whenever a neighborhood or a house goes wild for it, we've got that neighborhood off Citrona here, close to the parsonage. I love that one here. When we were in Titusville, there was this guy, he worked on the power grid, and like he was like Clark Griswold on steroids, but he was qualified to do it. Like so, and he just did his whole house, rooftop, everything. The whole neighborhood would walk, and he just let people walk around his neighborhood and enjoy it. So it was just a great time. So thank you for indulging me a little bit in your Christmas favorites. I want to take us into the text today, and I'm going to give people in the chat a little bit more time if they want to type in some responses to any of these questions. Rachel's going to bring us back to that in a second. But I want to take us to the book, and early on in the chapter here, Andy and Anne talk about thin places. They talk about Bethlehem being a thin place, a place of pilgrimage. And for those listening, if you maybe haven't read the book, a thin place is really a place that has been designated by people or numbers of people where heaven meets earth, and the distance between heaven and earth is just so minimal. And so I was wondering, Rachel, do you have anywhere in your story that has brought you to a place that is like you would say this is a thin place, and where is it, and why is that?
It is, yes, it is the chapel at Warren Willis Camp. I spent, um, I was on the support team my last year as a camp counselor, and I was the worship coordinator. So I spent 9 weeks in that chapel, 3 services a day, 5 days a week. So that's something like 105 worship services over that course of time. And it's where I first felt my call into ministry. Um, it's the place probably, I don't actually remember when I accepted Christ, but I would not be surprised if that was one of the places that was so meaningful to me in that space. Watching other kids just be transformed by the love of God. Um, and then half the time in the summer, camp would have these huge storms roll across the lake. So you would see the lake go from like calm, placid to just churning green. Half the time we get stuck in there, no bathrooms. So there's just like a lot of holy things happening in that space. And camp itself has there every meaningful thing that has happened in my life has somehow come back to camp. So I'm not the only one that has that story, I know, and that's why it's almost undeniable to think that this is not a thin space.
Right, right. Hey Jeff, what about you? Have you any like places that you would just say are special, holy, thin places for you?
Yeah, I'd say for me, it's the church. I was blessed to be part of St. Luke's Methodist up here in Indianapolis. A great church, great people, and now at Memorial. Many of us we live in the business world. We travel every week. It's competitive, and to me, coming back to church every week is a way just to reconnect and re-energize and remember what's most important in your life.
Yeah.
And so I love the world at large, but I think there's just something about, coming back with fellow Christians and meeting at church and tapping back into, your real purpose that
Mhm.
always to me is that thin space.
I love that. Thanks, Jeff. Thank you. Jessica, what about you?
Like Rachel, I have found that space at Warren Willis as well. But I've also found it in some surprising places, places like a hospital room. Oftentimes,
Hmm.
whether the very beginning of a life or the very end of a life, it feels so thin there. That space is so thin. I feel like you can reach out and touch. Like you can feel God's presence. The Holy Spirit is there with you. And I have felt that on so many occasions, for my own um, moments of grief and celebration and for others. And yeah, that tends to be where I feel it like most acutely. Other places are my backyard when my kids are running around and laughing and, squealing and I can feel it there too. But yeah, it's going to be in those like I love the surprise place, right? Like where you're not expecting it and then all of a sudden, oh, but there you are.
So it's places that become the place of memory as well, aren't they? Like they're
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
when you like, because I'd be the same with the hospice, right? I just find walking into a hospice room when someone is there for the rest of their lives, and you know that, and they know that, and their family knows it. It's just holy ground in which everything else in life suddenly becomes meaningless, and time is the only gift that people have, and the gift of presence, and it's just holy, holy ground. And what I find is though that when I'm in this place long enough and I get to come back, and it's almost like I can say, "Oh, this was such and such's room as well," it's weird, but it just becomes that holy place again. So yeah, totally agree with that, and I'm with Jeff too. My home church, when I go back to Balnahinch to my little Methodist church there, and the sun shines in through those stained glass windows, and I think of all the memories of just God's grace before I knew anything about it evident to me in that place. Like, so just, yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you again for indulging me a little bit. In page 73, let's check in with the chat. Rachel, catch us up there.
Yeah, there's actually some really lovely traditions that people have. I want to share those too because I just think they're wonderful. Carrie
Mhm.
Mack had said that she doesn't get to do it very often because she has to work, but her parents do chili night where they host the grandkids and they wear their pajamas and they all have chili on Christmas Eve, which I personally want to go to as well, but I also work. So then Lori Ray had said many Christmases growing up were in Louisville, Kentucky. My cousin, 10 days older, were taking or talking about those memories today. The tradition later changed. My dad's birthday was December 25th and was celebrated more. And then with COVID and becoming the family matriarch, it's still morphing, but our family always has time together to celebrate Christ's birth. And then Deborah Russ had said that they would read the story and like bring in the nativity pieces and act out the story
Wow,
by incorporating the nativity pieces. Um, and then when I asked about thin places, Lori said, in the middle of a hug from a loved one, while writing in my prayer journal, or listening to music in the car alone. And Deborah said, many of my thin places have happened listening to or performing spiritual music.
that's awesome. Thank you. The psalmist says, "Where can you go to get away from my presence?" Right? Like, and we hear that again and again. Those are responses. I love that. Hey, page 73 in our book, getting back to the text, it includes this wonderful quote that they offer from the Catholic scholar Raymond Brown. I want to read it so that people get to hear it at home. As son of David, he's talking of Jesus here, of course. As son of David, he is heir to all the history of Israel. And as the Son of God, he embodies that divine grace which always goes beyond expectation. The Old Testament past illustrates God's mercy even to the unworthy. And now his Son will share revelation and grace even more widely for the glory of Israel and a light to the Gentiles. Jessica, talk to me a little bit about why these titles, Son of David, Son of God, why are they so important?
Oh, yeah. So it sounds like you're saying the same thing there, right?
Mhm.
Son of. But actually, those are two very different statements. And they are held almost in not contention, but they're held in this like suspension with one another, right? Son of David, that's God's promise to Israel, right? that is the hopes, the covenant hopes of God's promises of restoration. And Son of God, that's his divine identity, right? That's he's revealing the very nature of God. And together they are they're holding Jesus's humanity and divinity both at one time, which is just like the both and of it, right?
Hmm.
There's this like holiness in recognizing the both and. And so to come and be born among us as one of us, but also still he's fully human and fully divine. There's this mystery of Christ that is fully present in both of those, and understanding that one does not exist without the other, that they are both the same at the same, or they are both true at the same time, is just, it is one of the my core understandings of who Christ is, who Jesus is when he is born to Mary and to Joseph and to us, and comes to live and walk among us. And so yeah, that's the importance there is just that I feel like that's foundational for understanding his walk among
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Rachel, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, the thing that is important too is the drawback to the Old Testament, right? Or to
Hmm.
the First Testament and to the prophecies. And so calling Jesus son of David is not just um identifying him and his humanity, because it is showing that God is, or that Jesus is fully God, fully human, but that he is the one who will come to bring salvation to God's chosen people. And it is so important, right? Like I actually think that we don't grasp the full importance of this in the same way that other um traditions, especially people of the Jewish tradition, would grasp. Like I try to sit within first century Palestine and try to hear this prophecy, right? It's become such an ingrained part of our Christian history, um, that it's just kind of accepted, and it's not necessarily as profound nearly as it would have been to hear for those who were first hearing Mark, or well, hearing Matthew and Luke in this setting, but just um, so son of David, son of God, recognizing that even within all of the brokenness and the darkness and the sadness, the covenant between God and God's people remains, and that Jesus is coming to experience the fullness of humanity as it exists. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's just a really profound statement to hold those two things together.
That promise
Yeah.
fulfilled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That promise fulfilled. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeff, you got anything you want to throw in on that one?
Yeah, I mean, the only other thing I'd throw in there is I just noticed the transition, right, from, the history of Israel, the son of David, to the transition to the Gentiles and the whole world, right? And so that's the thing that I think we still live out today is to really, fulfill the Great Commission and really take the messaging that was originally for the Jewish people and for Israel to the world.
It's just a widening of God's mercy. Like that,
Right.
that's what I see in that. That's what I reflect on in that, is that in this Christ child, the vision is expanding, or our understanding of the vision of God's redemption is just expanding and getting bigger than any of the limits that human minds had placed upon it. I just think it's so rich and such a rich image there. The authors continue the next page. They talk a little bit about. I picked up on just this image of when we sing "Hark the Herald Angels Sing." Our songs are joining in with those choirs of angels, and I just wondered what kind of reaction that brings about for you. The thought that when we sing these songs at any time of year, of course, whatever hymn or song of worship it is, that we're joining in the worship of the angels as we've been reading about it in these gospel passages. Jeff, do you have anything that you jump in on that, just in terms of what that evokes within you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, sometimes I think that as we try to reach the unchurched, we need to think about all of our traditions and how they hit people who aren't used to the traditions, right? But I think at Christmas time especially, I love the old songs. I love the thought that not only is it connecting to those angels, but also connecting to the generations of people that sang these exact songs. And there's just something about the tradition of Christmas that again brings us to that thin place, brings us back to our heritage and to our faith. And so I really enjoy singing the traditional songs at
Yeah.
Christmas. They never get old. Everybody knows them. And so the church seems like they sing them all together. And
Yeah.
I just love that.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Jessica, what about you?
Yeah, during it's humbling for me to think about that, to be part of this. I get this way during All Saints Day as well, when I think about a
Hmm.
cloud of witnesses and being among, right, that cloud of witnesses. It's the same thing, this idea of my voice and our voices together in corporate worship, being active in worship, like it's not a passive thing, but it is active, is so like that moment of recognition that, oh, hey, this isn't just like I'm not just singing a song. No, I'm in active worship. And it's this unending hymn that is, has been going on for all the ages and continues on long before me, long after me. I think it's interesting, like during the height of COVID, when, we weren't gathering, um, I really missed that, and that physical presence with others, but then also like that lifting of our voices, and it felt like our spirits were, lifting and joining with that host. So yeah, it that actually kind of that makes a thin space, right? Like that boundary between earth and heaven is thinner and thinner. And
Yeah.
it feels like the more voices together, the more
Yeah.
it
No,
thins.
it sure does. Rachel, you got anything you want to add to that?
It's about singing, but it's also just about this story in general. Today, Austin and I watched my nieces perform in their nativity play yesterday at my brother's Episcopal church up in Wisconsin, and they were angels within that play, and they gave their lines and they professed, fear not. And um, then you think about the lyrics of something like "Hark the Herald Angels Sings" or any of these old Christmas hymns, and you recognize that, especially for people who are not necessarily regular churchgoers, they come every so often for whatever reason, but they come and they know these hymns. This is a time where we share in our collective understanding, but also some of the really rich theology. Like Hark the Herald
Hmm.
Angels sings what's the it's like the second verse or something, Son of the Father, begotten, not created.
Hmm.
Like if
Hmm.
you sit with that actual line, it's a very, I mean, it's exactly what we just
Great.
talked about with Son of God, Son of Man, but like even the language, right? Begotten, not created. They're two different, and it's Trinitarian. And people sit there and they sing it every year. And if you started to break some of it down, like we are professing what we believe when we sing it, but we are also inviting that grace to be working into how we understand things. So it's from the people who went before us, because we've been singing that hymn has been sung for hundreds of years at this point, and it will continue to be sung. I mean, it's one of the top like 10 Christmas songs of all
Yeah.
time. So, um, yeah, just and to think about the generations of kids that are coming into these Christmas pageants and doing these things, even if they're exposing their friends to it, just the constant good news that's shared during this space.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Hey, I want to keep us moving. We've got a bunch of questions. We want to get through them all. The shepherds. Let's talk about the shepherds. There is some conversation in there about this image of shepherd and how it's a fairly consistent image all the way through the biblical witness there. So I just wanted to ask you all, is the image of shepherd is that something that's meaningful to you? Is it comforting? Is it encouraging? If so, why? If not, why not? Let's jump to Jessica first.
Yeah, I mean, look, I can understand why people don't like it, the idea of like having independence and like having that, but I actually really like the idea of being a shepherd. Shepherds, I think about the song, while shepherds watch their flocks by night, all seated on the ground, right? They're all seated on the ground. They're down in the dirt with and they are living out with their flocks. They're not, up in a cabin, or they're not staying at the Four Seasons, right? They're out in it. And so that's how they're guiding, is from right in the middle of things. So that actually, that comforts me. I like that image of um, God as being down in it with me. I'm not alone. We are not alone. That United Church of Canada, that creed that I'll always come back to, is we're not alone. Thanks be to God, he's down in the mud with us. He's sitting in the dirt, and we're going to experience the glory together.
So there's
We're going to get the
encouragement
mud
in,
together, but we're going to get the
right.
glory too.
There's encouragement in God's presence with us in there. Sounds like a sermon I preached just over 24 hours ago.
Maybe, maybe.
Jeff, what about you? Is this a comforting, good, strong image for you?
Yeah, it really is for me. I like it for two reasons. I mean, first, kind of similar to what Jessica was saying, I like the idea that God's willing to be a shepherd who cares for all people, and even the lost sheep, for example, right? So even if you're someone who's had a life that's been full of sin, or perhaps things you regret, there's always a way back. So I like that, number one. But number two, I like what he models for us being the shepherd, right? This idea of servant leadership, this idea that it's not about the title and being willing to take sometimes the what's perceived to be the lower role, but to be a servant to others, and try to emulate, kind of Jesus as a shepherd. So I like it a lot. Yeah.
Thank you. Rachel, what do you got?
It's just again, I've been sitting with this story because you start to read it so many times, and I've been sitting with it, trying to read it and hear it from, again, the perspective of listeners, or those first century Palestinians and folks who would be reading this or hearing this for the first time. And the shepherd is just it's such an integral part of society at that point, but also one that would be comparable to X, Y, and Z today, that keeps things working, but is probably someone that's behind the scenes a lot of the time, or someone who is in a thankless job or doing something. Um, and so it just also is a reminder that Christ comes for all people, and the people who are welcomed to Christ's birth are the ones that we would probably forget about if we were sending out invitations of our own accord. And that's why we are not in charge of sending out Jesus's birthday party invitations.
Right? 100%. I think that was the powerful thing for me in this part of the text, was just like the understanding that shepherds are not exactly what you would call top of the social ladder. They're actually at the opposite end, and that God reveals this story to shepherds first, invites shepherds to be the witnesses first. I just found that such a rich thing. But not also that, the fact that the one of the biblical images used again and again is God's shepherd heart. Like, again, what Jessica's saying, right down in the midst of life, in the midst of all of that, is right there, present with, tending to, protecting, caring for, feeding, providing for, just all these wonderful images of the presence of God in our lives. I wanted you to imagine what it might have been like to have been a shepherd watching your flock by night, all seated round the fire. And like this appearance, right? And when I read the text, I'm probably like influenced by works of art and movie images that have tried. I've probably all this influence going on, but try and draw back from that. Just imagine yourself for a second that night. What's your response, Jessica? What's your response?
I mean, anybody who's taught a Sunday school class knows exactly what this is going to be. And it is, why every time an angel appears, what do they go? Hey, don't be afraid. Everything's okay.
Right.
I am from God. And like, I mean, like, if an angel of the Lord's coming to you and the first thing they say every single time is, don't be scared,
Right?
I imagine it's probably terrifying. And like on the like other end of that may be unsettling, which that makes me think about like how God works. There's a mix of fear and awe and confusion and excitement, and there's this urgency to see what's going on and kind of understand and share what we've witnessed, but also like there's like this disruptive nature and this obedience and proclamation that this that we're called to, right? Like to obedience and proclamation. And then there's this idea that encountering God, like, yeah, it might unsettle us, it might even terrify us, but it's also going to reorient our lives. So,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Jeff, imagine yourself on a hillside that night and bam, angels. How do you feel?
Yeah.
What's going on for you?
I know it had to be shocking, and it would be shocking. What's interesting to me is how these people probably waited for the coming Messiah their whole life, but yet when the Messiah actually is going to be born, there's this feeling that this is just an average day. I wasn't ready for it today. I'm shocked that it's today. I'm shocked that I'm the one that the angels are appearing in front of, right? And to me, it's a great reminder for all of us. It's interesting, teaching Christian education. We talk about the Old Testament, we roll our eyes at the mistakes they continue to make over and over again, right? But in the end, I'm not sure that we'd be ready today if some of these things happened, right?
Right.
We have paradigms about how it's going to happen, how Jesus will return, and I think that could be completely wrong. I mean, the
Yeah.
little nudges we feel, maybe Jesus is in our lives weekly, daily, and we don't see it because we're looking for something grander or something bigger. So that's kind of what hit me is we would all be shocked. We
Yeah.
believe
Yeah.
it, but yet is it really happening? Is today the day? And so that's what kind of hit me.
I think that nails it, Jeff. Like on the edge of our seat, waiting for this, like I had ladies in my church back home. I can remember this day when they were children. They told me when they were young people, they were discouraged from going to the movie theater in case Jesus came back because
Could
he
be
wouldn't be going
tonight.
to the cinema to
Yeah,
get you, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
like, like seriously, like that
yeah,
is no word of a
yeah.
lie. And I just you spend your life waiting on it, singing about it, and then it happens. It's just like, whoa, it's immediate suspicion.
It's
Rachel,
just a Tuesday,
yeah, right?
yeah, yeah.
Talk to me, Rachel. What about you if you were on the hillside that night?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. I don't like the dark that much. So you would not find me out there with these sheep and everything. But I imagine that the shepherds like have to be on this kind of, it's probably similar to soldiers or other things where you're keeping watch, right? Like your body is constantly in a state of alertness. So you're always on the watch for potential dangers that are to come. And also, this is so commonplace for them that it's that weird relaxed feeling. It's almost like parenthood actually where something could happen at any given time but you're just kind of sitting in it. um and so but they know the threats, right? They know the potential threats that are to come, and this is not what they would ever expect. This is completely out of sorts. And because it's dark, because it's on a hillside, it's not common day. These things come and they're bright, right? Like that's the thing I come back to is they're probably like so blinded by it at the same time that they're just like, yeah, well, I would be afraid too in that sense. But what I was trying to find this really fast because I wanted to make sure that I had it right, but they have this heavenly host that comes suddenly. And then what they say after in Luke 2 is
Mhm.
that like they hurried off immediately after this happens, right? Yeah, it would be terrifying. And still, they've been longing for this for so long. They act on faith and just go. And that's where it comes back to this question, like I don't know that these days if that were to come to us, if that would be the case, like would we act on that kind of faith?
Same with the Joseph text yesterday from Matthew chapter 1, wasn't it? Joseph has this dream. There's probably a lot of fear in his response, but at the end of the day, what does he do? He wakes up, he changes his mind. He says, "You know what, Mary, you and I, we're going to stick together. We're going to get through this." And, the story plays out. So I think it does. It moves from this, makes this shift from fear and immediate shock to somewhere inside knowing this is right and finding the courage to say, you know what, I'm going to roll the dice and take a chance on this because I think yes, this was true. So, Rachel, there's been a flurry of activity in the chat. I see it scrolling there. Could you tell us what's going on in there?
Yeah, I may have missed some of it, so I apologize if I didn't get all your comments. Marilyn Hargrave has, I just think, a really very sweet image as well. Her dad would take her sister and her to see the sheep every Sunday after church on the way home. We moved to North Carolina and never asked Dad why he did that, but we talked about our thoughts all the time. Um, I just
That's nice.
that's lovely. And I really love sheep. That's the funny thing is that I wouldn't have a problem being around sheep all day, but not
Just
the
a
dog.
daytime shepherd, Rachel. That's all you are,
Daytime shepherd,
daytime shepherd.
which is basically what we do, right? Um, Lori, when asked about how you would respond to or to put yourself in the shepherd's shoes or sandals, Lori said she would respond with disbelief, fear, curiosity, being sure the others saw the angels too. Jean said, I cannot imagine how awestruck I would be by a heavenly chorus. And then Lori also said, I remember as a teenager, an adult asked us, what if Jesus comes as a hitchhiker? And it generated a lot of conversation.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, just I want to speak to everybody watching on. Bishop Ken Carter used to talk to us all the time about using your scriptural imagination, right? Learning what it is to work out what's going on in the white space between the words on the pages of your Bible. And that's just a really good exercise, is anytime you're reading scripture, put yourselves in the shoes of those characters that you're reading about, or imagine what it might be like to stand on the side of a scene and watch from a perspective and what might be going on. It's just a wonderful way to think about the other things that go unwritten in the text and really sort of helps the scripture come to life whenever you're able to do that. So, hey, on page 76, there's a quote I want to read for you. We, like the shepherds in the field, might fear the presence of God's messengers, but also, like the shepherds, we can open our ears to hear the good news, and we too can proclaim the birth of the Messiah. Now, when I read that, I was thinking this is about the movement from shock and fear into this place of living out our calling. We've touched on this already, but I'm wondering if you've ever had any kind of shift like that take place in your own story. Jeff, this was a question that you liked. Would you like to speak to it first?
Yeah, there's probably a lot of examples, but the one that really came to mind to me, happened here at St. Luke's in Indianapolis, where I had been going to church like a lot of people for years, sitting in the pews, glad to go on Sundays. Finally decided I want to really start getting deeper in my faith. This is several years ago, and I took a Disciple One class, and it was great, and so forth. But it was shocking to me near the end of it. They came up to me and wanted me to lead one of these classes, and my paradigm was that I was going to be taking classes and learning myself for a number of years before I would ever teach anything. But I went ahead and did it, and in the end, it scared me and shocked me a little bit, but it made me really learn more, read more, get deeper myself, and it definitely accelerated my path to learning on my own. And so clearly, I think it's one of those things where I'd say to people out there, if you've ever thought of facilitating or leading a class, do it, because first of all, you don't have to be perfect. Second of all, it's a great way to make yourself learn and challenge yourself. And I look at what that led to. It led to multiple leadership positions within St. Luke's. It led to Memorial and working together on the strategy project, Christian education, getting to know you and Rachel on a level, as part of the leadership of the council, and then even speaking with the bishop, which I never would have thought I would do. So I just think it's interesting if you lean into your faith where it can go, and I encourage people to do that.
Hey, the first thing they wrote up whenever I was started out teacher training way back in the day, the first thing they pointed to in the wall, that old proverb, I hear, I forget, I see, I remember, I do, I understand, right? Like just get in, get your
Yeah.
hands dirty, get going with it, make the mistakes and learn from them. I think it's a great
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
Jessica, what about you? You ever had a shift like that take place in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen that in all kinds of, in lots of ways, right? Personally, professionally. One that I think is probably applicable here is In 2016, or in not in 2016, 2019, I watched the special called General Conference. And I was watching it from my desk at work. And there was a lot of fear in that, just knowing the communities in which I'm involved and the people that I love, and just knowing how the course of that time really affected so many people in such a profoundly negative way.
Mm.
And there was fear involved in that because I was terrified for lots of folks. And it quickly, like within hours, sort of shifted into action. And I mean, it started with a text to a group of friends here in the Florida conference, and then it got bigger and broader. And then I was in a WhatsApp group with people from around the world, the Philippines, all over Africa, in Europe, like everywhere and across the country. And it started on this journey to a fully inclusive church that we finally saw some realization of that last year in 2024. And just knowing that that started so long ago, and it came from a place of frustration and fear, and frustration and fear were very much existing together. um it was really interesting, and that discipleship like involves trusting God enough to move forward, even if you don't know what you're supposed to be doing, or if you're not sure where to start or what to do. Just starting is kind of that moment of like, okay, this is how we're going to shift it from fear to action. You just start. And so yeah, I've had that experience.
Thank you. Gene Robinson sums it up really well in the chat there. I can read that here on my screen. Leaning in is where it's at, right? Even when you don't know how it's going to work out, leaning in is where it's at. And that's our trust. That's putting our faith in God. Hey, I want to keep moving us on here. I'm going to skip over question 8 as it is on your pages. I'm going to go straight to question 9 because I think I want to talk about some action and the life of us as Christians here. So we read on page 80, Simeon and Anna remind us that God answers prayers, even if those answers are a long time coming. So, how are we, not just us on the screen here, but we, Christian family, how are we with prayer that requires our attention over the long haul? Rachel,
How are we?
yeah, how are we
We're
with it?
really bad at it.
To say more.
Yeah. I think this stems back to and maybe not we on this call, because I actually think a lot of the folks that are listening in on our Facebook chat are some of the people who can sit with prayer really well. Um, that's the irony of that question. I see who's with us. I see who, they have a steady prayer life. But we as a whole, as a community, as a people, as humans who are used to instant gratification, um, are not very patient when it comes to um, our expectations of God. I've said this before, God's not a slot machine or a genie or not slot vending machine. And yet we treat our prayers as if that were the case. And it, it's something that we need to practice because it pours out or spills out into every space of our life. We just expect things to happen, and so many things take so much time.
Yeah. Jeff, what about you? Like, even following on from what Rachel said, if there's a collective, yeah, we're not great at this, why do you think that is?
A few things hit me, right? I think, again, most of us on this call probably pray daily, multiple times a day. I think for most people out there, whether they're people that attend a church or not, they pray mostly when they need it, right? And they're not in the habit of praying on a regular basis. For me, it's almost the opposite problem of I think more long term. And what I've had to learn over time is to break down the long haul goals into actions that I can take daily, weekly, monthly to achieve those long-term things in my faith journey, right? Um, and so I think there's common elements, things like gratitude that I want to always make sure I start with and I include because it grounds me in how I want to pray. But I think the thing I've had to learn over time is to pray toward things that will lead to the things that I want long haul, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, no, it really does, really does. Jessica, what would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And there's this idea that oftentimes people are like, oh, just living in this like passive, like I'm passively praying. It's like a resignation almost, right? And so the idea is that it's sustained hope and that it still requires attention to flourish, right? Like hope dies if it's not, if you don't feed it. And there's this trust in God's timing that you have to continue to like it takes work, especially because we don't see it moving. It's very hard. I think about like if you've ever been a baker and you've made anything in an oven where you can't actually see in, you it's a whole trust the process, right? Like I know if I leave it in there and it's going to take 47 minutes in this oven with this temperature at this time, I know I've done this a million times, and yet there is the urge to open it. And if you open
Right.
it, it's going to fall and it's going to collapse. There's that urge. We want to see it moving. We want to see it
Right.
working. We want to see it. And so this idea that like I just want one little peek, one little peek, um, and not like feeding that hope, but like keeping it. You got to keep it closed. It's doing its work. I feel like that's kind of where I land on that anyway. And so it's hard. I'm very bad at it. I'm very bad at it, and I am also teaching two toddlers what it means to wait and to wait in hope. And we are talking about Advent a lot and what that means. And like it is hard. It is hard because they want the piece of chocolate. They want it, they want it. They want Christmas here right now. They want to see Santa. They want to do, go to church and do the nativity play, maybe. So yeah, I mean like just waiting is hard, man. And
Yeah,
waiting in
yeah,
hope is
no.
even harder.
Rachel, what is coming up in the chat there? I see a few responses filtering through.
Really good stuff. Lori said it's hard to know I may not be here to see some fervent prayers answered. That doesn't lessen my belief in and need for prayer. Um, isn't that the case, right? There are so many things that even we pray for daily that probably won't come in our
Right.
lifetime. And we you're right, it doesn't lessen our faith and our need for prayer. Jean said it's hard not to grow weary in well-doing, which is why we are encouraged not to give up. There's aspect of if you keep praying for the same thing, you don't have faith. Carrie said, I like how Jeff brings up the action that comes with prayer. That's a focus I have. What can I now do about what I have been praying about? And then Deborah said, I had a close family member who struggled with drug addiction for nearly 15 years and went through many stages of hopeful and hopelessness. My prayers changed many times through this journey, but they helped me stay connected to God and to feel His presence. I grew in many ways because of the ways God intervened as a result.
I think this prayer thing, often our problem with it is that we've got it the wrong way around. It's like Jeff was saying that we pray because we have need. And what if we were able to like cancel that understanding entirely and talk about prayer as the cultivation of deep faith and trust in God, of drawing closer to the God who we believe is good, and allowing that time to shape our hearts in ways that always says God is good, even though we wait for answers to prayers. I just think if there was one thing that I could transform like that with the people that I minister among, it would be changing our understanding of prayer and seeing and recognizing it as cultivation of deep relationship with God. So we got about 12 minutes left, guys. I want to give good time to this last couple of questions here. So I'm going to jump down to number 11 on your list there first. On page 84, we are challenged about being witnesses to the story of Christ's birth. This, for me, is essentially a challenge regarding evangelism, being a witness, talking and speaking of Christ, showing Christ in the world. So, what are your thoughts on sharing the good news of the gospel? Do we do a good job of that? And how do you respond personally when you hear that word evangelism? Jessica, we're coming to you first on this one.
I feel like understanding that I named a class about evangelism, about not making it weird
Right.
for the whole for the whole district might give you an idea of how I feel about it. Listen, evangelism is great if you understand that what evangelism is. The problem is I come to is that the word evangelism and evangelical has a different connotation now than what my understanding of evangelism has always been. And so it kind of feels gross. And I always like preface it with like evangelism or evangelical, but not like those guys. And that is not a great way to start.
Right.
But also, I want to put a little air in there and go, hey, listen, I understand that this word has taken on a connotation. I'm taking it back. And I'm here to tell you something good because you know what? When I get a good deal at the grocery store, or when I find a great parking spot, or when I have a great
Yes.
recipe, I want to tell people about it. Why do I not want to tell people about the best news that they can get, which is God is with us all the time,
Mm.
prevenient grace. Let me tell you about some grace. Hello, my name is Jessica, and I am a United Methodist. Let me talk about grace and the grace of God.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Jeff, talk to me about evangelism.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's interesting because you can talk to people in churches and they'll even ask the question, should we worry about growing, right? And I think number one is biblical, but number two, I think, and obviously in the book 28 and there's many other passages that talk about it being something that it's biblical we should do, but I think the world needs it so much right now. And yet I worry because when you look at the Pew report that just came out in 2025, the unchurched is growing, and to me this divide is occurring. So we absolutely need to serve our congregations and serve our people and grow their faith and so forth, but I think we have to find a way to reach the unchurched. And that may mean meeting them where they are. That may mean in many different ways than how we do traditional church. And there's nothing to say we can't do the same thing. Um, but I just think that we need to have not just an inward focus, but we need to worry about becoming what I call a country club church that we want to just serve the members that we have and we feel more comfortable being just who we are. How do we get uncomfortable and really face outward and reach those people that are in the white space, particularly now, when you think about disaffiliation, you think about the places where there's not brick and mortar churches. I could even be so bold to say that we will be successful if in 5 years, the largest United Methodist church in Florida is the online church, right?
Mm.
So I just think we're going to have to break paradigms if we're going to really reach people, if we're going to evangelize, and probably not use that word, but if we are going to meet modern people where they are, young people where they are, it's
Yes.
probably going to take different sets of processes, different sets of people. Doesn't mean we can't continue serving the congregations of our existing church. We should do that, of course, but also meeting and reaching the unchurched may be something different than what we've done in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Rachel. What do you say what do you think when you hear the word evangelism? How do we do at it?
So, I would venture to say some of our mainstream denominations, not just United Methodist, but some of our other ones don't do it very well. Um, like Jessica was saying, we get nervous to associate with that word. And yet, John Wesley was the ultimate evangelist.
Right.
And here's the thing. It hasn't been working for us. And from a statistical standpoint, you could say just because you can see the decline in these denominations, but more so, it's because the message of Jesus Christ that we are sharing is not being spread loudly.
Mm.
And so, what I have witnessed, even since I was in college, I remember sitting in a class with a guy who um, was an atheist, and at the same time, he's interacting with us, and he goes, "Oh, I didn't know that there were Christians like you." And I thought, "Oh my gosh, we're not loud like not that you need to be loud, right? We talk
Mhm.
about being humble and being meek, but if that voice isn't loud, the voice of the gospel of what we are called to do, that's a problem.
Yeah.
And it's something that we can do with our actions, but what has always sat with me, especially since that first time the bishop was here and I came to Memorial, Bishop Tom had said, like, when you are serving, make sure that you're telling people why you serve. Not that you're just serving, but like make the connection to your faith. And so that's the piece that I go back to is like, sure, like do everything that we're doing. Love shows up, but like do it and make the connection as to why love shows up
Yeah.
when you're
Yeah.
around people.
I think that's it. And I think part of our problem is that, over the years in many quarters, evangelism became a code word for growth, numeric growth. And it was all about the sort of the numbers of people and how big your church could build. And what if we ditched this idea of prayer as a shopping list and recognized prayer as cultivation of closeness with God? And what if that changed our hearts to the point where actually what we talk about is how God is transforming our hearts, and that becomes conversationally the good news of God's transforming power in my life. And hey, Jessica, this is what God's doing in my life right now, and I don't know, I don't understand it, but it's what I see. So can I talk to you about that? Right? Like that's evangelism right there. It's conversational, and I think it's something that we could all reclaim. But I want to say it begins with cultivating closeness with God and experiencing God right in the middle of that. So let's talk about that as we close out our conversation tonight. The chapter closes by inviting all of us as readers to stay alert to the presence of God in the world. What are the ways that you pay attention and stay alert to God's presence in the world each day? How do you tune in? Jeff, how do you tune in each day?
I think sometimes it's looking for the small things, not just the big things. People say miracles don't happen anymore, but maybe they happen in small ways, and looking for those things that are nudges or those positive things that you see happening. I couldn't help as I read this to think about the movie Evan Almighty and Morgan Freeman's quote, as God in that movie, where he said, if you pray for patience, do you think God gives you patience, or does God give you the opportunity to be patient? If you pray for your family to be closer, does God just zap you with warm, fuzzy feelings, or does God give you the opportunity to love each other in different ways and maybe not the way you expected it to be, right? So I think sometimes we just have to break down our own paradigms of what we expect and be open to seeing God everywhere, to seeing God in our lives in all kinds of situations, big and small. And
Yeah.
if we're more prepared like that, I think we'll be more likely to see it. Last thing I'd say is in some of our questions earlier, we talked about how it was almost incredible that the angel appears, they're shocked, but they get up and they go. I think that's because they didn't have as many distractions as we did, right? I mean, today Rachel would probably be like, well, I don't know what I'm gonna, I've got kids. I can't just get up and go, and I think we have to be ready and be thinking about it, almost like what would I do if kind of thing.
Yeah. Thank you. Rachel, what about you?
So I have taken up the practice like you of
Mhm.
doing Lectio 365 every day, which has rooted and grounded me in scripture. I am taking up the read the Bible in a year in 2026, which I have done before, but I
Mhm.
think it's time to do it again.
Good.
Um, but in the middle of that, there is this feeling in some spheres where we can't be in the world, right? We got to separate the culture, whatever you want to call it, culture wars, blah blah blah. That's not helpful. What is helpful is being able to separate the things that are harmful and damaging from the things that are holy. And so much of what we watch and see and connect with on TV or in movies has a theological element to it. Charlie and I were just talking about
Mm.
the new Knives Out, Rise Up Dead Man.
Everybody watch it.
Yes, everybody watch it. Sorry, it's a minor plug as we talk about evangelism too, but that we can find elements of God's grace, of theology within the things that we consume, and that itself is a practice in practical theology.
Yeah.
But you have to be grounded in the other things, right? Like
Yes.
scripture first, reason, experience, all of those things. But that's me saying you shouldn't feel guilty for spending time doing the things that you love as long as you can connect it back to how God is moving in those spaces.
100%. And I just want to recognize also Rachel, mother of young children, parent of young children, Jessica, parent of young children. Maybe could you just speak to us a little bit about that? Because the days that you're in are the days where the kids are just like, me, and you have to give yourself to them. So how are you staying alert to God's presence in the midst of just family life and working full time? And talk to those who are listening that need to hear that.
Jessica?
I mean, I like don't sleep. I don't know. It's hard. Listen, Charlie, when you we had that being connected and all the brief series just a bit ago about like, oh, you need to do this and you
Yeah,
were giving these examples and I'm like, I would absolutely love to. I
right.
sleep less than 4 hours a night at this point between kids, work, home, all the things. But there are ways. I find, there's gonna be I'm gonna get an hour drive to work every day. I'm and back. So I'm listening to the Family Prayer podcast. My kids aren't quite old enough for that, but it's great. It's brand new. It just started in December and it's actually out of the Florida conference through this whole thing. But this prayer podcast of like just taking this time, and it's 3 minutes, 4 minutes max of my day where I am intentionally focused and I can do it while I'm driving.
Yes.
I have time that I set aside for devotion. Again, it's another devotional. I'm doing the Awakening to Grace
Mhm.
devotion that's conference wide. Absolutely beautiful. It's so in tune. Today's was all about where have you seen God and his presence show up and like just sitting in that stillness, which is hard. It's not easy, and I'm not going to say it happens every day. I wish it did, but I am intentional about it, and I do find that space. And I have coffee with a friend. We try to do it every week. And that seems like that might not be an intentional place, but you know what? It is actually. We share faith, we share motherhood, we share kid stories, we share all of it, right? And it is this time of faithfulness and growing together. So yeah, you find the time, you give yourself the grace for when you don't find the
Yep.
time, and you
Yep.
know that this is a season of life, and it's going to move, it's going to
That's it.
change. So
That is it. Hey, I just want to throw in, like, I haven't got morning practices, but recently, if you haven't heard the chimes from our church over the last week, those chimes go off every hour of the day. And if I'm at my computer, those chimes now become an indication for me to just kind of stop what I'm doing, put a pen down, put a phone down, close the screen, and just take a few deep breaths and remember that God's with me and God is in that moment and God is in the work that we're doing. So, like, just little things like that where we can grab those few seconds to reset ourselves in the day and remember, as the psalmist says, there's nowhere we can go to get away from God's presence. We are 2 minutes over time, but I want to give the last word to the most important people here. That is the ones who are typing their words into our comments feed. So, Rachel, fill us in on what's been going on there.
Okay, I missed a few things. Um, and if I turn it on, I know that weird thing's going to happen where I get feedback. So I apologize if I've missed some things. Um, Carrie said, I stay connected to God every time I see a bird, a marsh rabbit, a squirrel, whatever it is. The first thing I think of when I see an animal is God. So being outside connects me with God and Lectio 365. Um, and then Gene Robinson said, Pastor Charlie, my friend in Arizona now listens to Lectio 365, and now her daughter in Tennessee is listening to it. So many people have experienced God in a new way because you shared with us. Lori said, being an only child, Jesus has always been my constant BFF and companion.
Love it.
Oh, and Knives Out was fabulous and fun.
Yes, yes, yes. So, two plugs today, friends, as we say goodbye. The first one is watch the Knives Out movie, the third one in the series. It is excellent. Please go and do it. And then we'll have theological conversations about it. The second one is Lectio 365. You're going to hear that a lot if you're in conversation with myself or Rachel or others on this call. It's just a helpful devotional tool. You download it onto your phone. You can tune in. There's 3 prayer times a day. You can take the morning one. You can take all three. It's up to you. It's just a good way to engage. Friends, we want to thank you for joining us tonight. Jessica, Jeff, thank you for giving your time to this conversation. I hope it's been rich for you. We hope it's been rich for everybody that's been on the call here. The feedback that you're giving us is that this is a great format, that we get to be together in this way. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for all of your input over these weeks. Once more, I encourage you to make sure you read that closing chapter of our book and let the text that we've been reading together continue to bless you over these next couple of days. And finally, if you can make it to church on Christmas Eve, we would love to see you. Services at 3, 4, 5, 7, and 9. We hope to see you there. If you're joining us online, we'll see you at 7. God bless you all.
Merry Christmas, everybody.